Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Inside ProCents. Today I'm joined with J.R. Edens, my partner, and the one and only, the real Jason Duncan. Don't get that confused with Jason Duncan. He's the real Jason Duncan. Not often imitated, but never duplicated. So, Jason, welcome. Thank you to join us.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you and JR, man.
All right. Just for us, we had the privilege of having you at our very first inaugural show. Um, 2 years ago at the ProCents trade show golf tournament, and you had just had released a book, Exit Without Exiting, which I think has made a big impact for me. And I know several of the people that attended the show had a great impact. But tell me what your experience has been now, having that book now in circulation for what, almost 2 years, a little bit longer, what that's been for you and how that's helped you grow your business.
Well, I think as with anything, when somebody writes a book, especially their first book, most authors would say the first book ends up suck. They hate that book. I'm not yet there at the place where I think the book sucks. I think I've got a 4.8 or 4.9 rating on Amazon. One person gave me a 1 star, and they were from somewhere in Europe, and I don't know why they didn't like it. Everybody else gave you 5 stars, but I tell you, the book needs a refresh. It needs new stories. And there's what I was telling my new intern who just started yesterday. I told him, I said, this book and I'm making him read it. He has to read it because he needs to know who I am and what I do. But I said, this book is really good, but it's incomplete. Since the publishing of that book, it came out March of 23. Since the publishing of that book, a lot has changed with my business that I wrote that book about. A lot has changed with my life and the other businesses that I own. A lot has changed with the mastermind that I run now and the clients that I serve. And I think that what I wrote was true for my experience and is true for millions of people, but it was incomplete. It stopped and there's more to learn. So I've learned that there's more. So the first book, really good book, I think, but not complete. And so that means I've got more to write.
Yeah, I love to hear that. Well, and I think that's something that a lot of people can take away from is because this book, in essence, was your baby. As you start a business, that's your baby. And sometimes you don't want to hear that negative criticism. But as you get further away from launch, you start seeing the imperfections or where you can improve and make things better because we're always striving for perfection. That's a goal for an entrepreneur and everyone else. I think that's a huge lesson for so many people in a business, whether you're a manager serving a role as a W-2 employee or you're a business owner. You're always seeking perfection, but you should never be afraid of a tactful criticism or constructive criticism for those that care about you the most.
From somebody who has your best interests at heart and who's really interested in seeing you be better. I think I'm open to that. Now, there are haters out there, and there are haters that just pile on and say stupid stuff. I don't give them any consideration. But the people who give thoughtful feedback, I think we need it. I mean, all of us need it. And if we're too big for getting that feedback, then we're going to suffer the consequences.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, we can't make everyone happy. There's always going to be the haters. And the best thing we can do is ignore them. I'm glad you're saying that. Um, what is one of the lessons that you would say that you've learned most from, now, since March of 23, in the book and how you may rewrite the next chapter of this? Not to give anything away.
Well, I think one of the biggest, well, I'll back up. I'll tell a brief story. On January 1st of 2024, so a little over a year ago from when we're recording this, New Year's Day was a pretty somber day for me because I had finished 23 in probably the worst way I could have ever imagined as from a business perspective. And going into that new year, I'm sitting on the couch like anybody would, just contemplating what's this year going to bring, what's happening. And I posted on Instagram on a story, just a thought that's like I'm looking forward to this year being a comeback year, going to be great, blah, blah, blah. Just general stuff. But I hadn't posted in a long time. So one of my friends saw that and texted me. He said, "Hey man, we need to go for a drive." And he had just bought a new McLaren, 6 months earlier, and we've been trying to get together with my car and his car and go driving. And I thought, okay, well, I don't have a McLaren, by the way, but he said, let's go driving. And so we met up later that afternoon and went driving. And I'm still like reeling from what had happened over the last 90 days. And we stopped to get a cup of coffee later in the afternoon. And he said, so what's going on? And I told him the story, which I'm not telling today, but I told him we don't have time, but I told him the story and he was like jaw dropped, couldn't believe it. He said, this is the craziest thing. He said, so what have you learned? And at that moment, I hadn't had the mental fortitude to think about what I'd learned. Like, what have I, which is what you asked me, Matt, what have I learned
Mhm.
since writing the book? Well, that pushed me to really deeply go introspective and find out what I had learned. And I spent the next I think 10 or 13 weeks writing in my newsletter about the top 10 lessons that I had learned. And one of those is temper your ambitions. It's only one, and it wasn't the most important one. It's just the one that I think would fit this conversation.
Mhm.
Temper your ambitions. There was a guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he wrote a book, uh, Charles Manley, I think is his name. He wrote a book called 12 Rules for Life or something like that back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And one of the things he said is temper your ambition. And I thought that's so counter to what we hear on TikTok and YouTube and all the social media channels today. It's like you've got to be ambitious, got to get out there. And his whole point was temper your ambitions because your ambitions can lead you astray because they will lie to you.
Yep.
And that is what I learned through the process. So my ambitions and building businesses and exiting businesses and writing books, I was chasing an ambition, and the ambition in some instances had lied to me. And I've learned now to temper those. That doesn't mean I'm not ambitious, but I've learned to temper my ambition.
Well, that's a huge lesson I think a lot of people could learn from. And there was a couple things that you said in there that made me pull up, my mission statement for ProCents. And I lead it's kind of two sentences. It ends off with one sentence is the golden rule. And we talk about referrals and collaboration, but treating others the way you'd like to be treated. And how people treat you is one thing. And we talked about the judgment that people provide because sometimes we're always trying to strive for people's ambitions that we've never met. We care for the approval of people that will not be there to help us out of the mud. So those that are surrounding us and spending the most time with us, those are the people that are going to be the most impactful for us. We may not utilize them as much as a sounding post as we should, but those are the ones that are going to be the true cheerleaders for you. But in my mission, I've said our mission is to inspire, connect, uplift professionals, entrepreneurs, and organizations, creating opportunities that leave a positive impact. And I think that's one thing that you've learned is in tempering your ambition is because if you're not all there, are you truly being positive? Are you always at that max level? And I've known you for many years. I think I've known you about the same amount of time as I've known JR. And you've always had that, uh, I would say, moxie about you where you command a room, not in a egotistical way, but where you seek positivity, you seek the opinion of others, but and also you're also leaving it where people can feel inspired to make their own impact because they're wanting to work with you. Um, so that's my take on it.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and I accept that and I appreciate that. And that's what I try to be. I think a lot of us are falling victim to the entrepreneur bro mentality that we see on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, and that you just got to be out there and you got to be brash and I admit like that's what I thought, well, that's what I should be.
Mhm.
That's what I should be to command a room, so to speak, and to do these things. but that's never who I've been. I've never been that guy my whole life, and I'm not. I I might have tried to be that way from time to time in different scenarios, and it just doesn't work out. So I just try to show up as myself, and I'm not going to be a doormat, but I'm also not going to be the guy that's up there beating his chest and telling everybody to get up and run circles around the room. And if you don't have a six pack, you're not worth anything. I'm not going to be that guy.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's, when you, I think you allow yourself to be humble enough to not be that guy to challenge people for who they're not, but accept people for who they are, you're able to build a more successful team. And as I mentioned earlier, I've known you for years and I've met the team that you've built and done businesses with. And these people have been an impact on myself, like you have, JR, as well. But that's the lasting impression. And for me, that's what I strive to leave is an impression that leaves when I leave the room, my impression's still there because people still remember that I didn't belittle them. And that's the one thing I've always taken away from you. You've never talked down to anyone. You've always met them where they're at, but provided a gentle nudge of maybe how to look at things differently. And I think that's where your success has come in writing a book, Exit It Without Exiting, is being able to gently nudge people to not work in the business, but work on the business.
Yeah.
And there's a distinct difference in that. Um, so,
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that too. I am working on having the pleasure of interviewing Michael Gerber on my podcast sometime in the next quarter. I'm hoping. I'm not. It's not a guarantee. But he wrote the book E-Myth. If for anybody who might be familiar with that, he is the one who coined the phrase and made it popular. Work on the business, not in the business.
okay.
That was his. That was he's developed a huge global brand around this concept. But I believe that it's even one step above that. I think there's working in the business, which is what most entrepreneurs do. There's working on the business, which is what Michael Gerber in the E-Myth talks about. And it's a lot of what I talk about in Exit Without Exiting. But what I've learned is there's a third level. There's in, there's on, and there's above. And I believe that entrepreneurs who are truly successful owner investors, rather than owner managers or owner operators, they're going to work above the business because the business becomes an investment. It's an asset that produces income for them, and you don't work on that. You don't work in it. You're above it. Like I don't work on my investments in the stock market. I don't work on my real estate portfolio. I'm above that. Those are things that provide me income without me having to be in it or on it. I'm above it, and it provides something for me as an asset. That's what I want to write about more in the next book.
Well, I'm excited to see what the next book's going to be. And I'll be a cheerleader for you, because I know you've been that for me, so I greatly appreciate it. And as we wrap up, I just want to, make sure that people, even though this book is a little over a year old, it's still worth reading. And we've talked about how this book is still a work in progress, but go out to Amazon, buy it, reach out to Jason. Jason, tell people how they can get in touch with you and learn more about exiting without exiting.
Well, for your listeners, this is not, I don't do this for everybody, but for your listeners, you can get a free copy of that book if you want it. You just have to pay the $5 for shipping and handling. But you can go to therealjasonduncan.com. That's therealjasonduncan.com slash free book. And if you go there, you just fill out your information. We'll send you a free book. You just have to pay the $5 for cover shipping and handling. And you can get a copy of it for free. And while you're at the website, poke around. There's other stuff there, other resources, tons of videos and links to all my social channels. And I'd love to connect with any of your listeners there.
All right. Well, we're going to make sure that we put that in the link below and the bio. That way, everyone has that link right there. That way, they're not searching for it. And Jason, JR and I are grateful that you've taken time out of your extremely busy calendar for us. And we look forward to doing more things with you in the future and, getting more insights for you and our business owners and business leaders. So thank you so much for that.
Well, it's an honor to be associated with you and JR. Thank you for letting me do this show today.
All right. Well, as we always try to do here at ProCents, we are just a platform looking to build meaningful relationships to help and drive mutual growth between businesses. We're bridging the gap between different parties. If you want to learn more, check out our website at www.procents.com and learn what the power of connection really is. As of now, we're signing off. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode of Inside ProCents.